The moment Violet Adams saw the cowboy walk through the swinging doors of the Silver Spur Saloon, she knew her life was about to change, though she could not have imagined how completely he would transform everything she thought she knew about freedom and love. The late afternoon sun of June 1878 cast long shadows across Kingman, Arizona territory, as Owen Garrett stepped into the dimly lit establishment. Violet had been working at the Silver Spur for 3 years, ever since her father's gambling debts had forced her into an indentured contract with Marcus Sullivan, the saloon owner who ruled his establishment with an iron fist and a cruel smile. She was 21 now, and the contract that bound her felt like chains around her soul. Owen removed his dusty hat as his eyes adjusted to the smoky interior. He was tall, with sun-weathered skin that spoke of years working cattle drives across the Arizona territory. His dark hair touched his collar, and when his gaze found Violet standing near the bar, something in his steady brown eyes made her heart skip in a way she had not felt in years. "What can I get you, mister?" she asked, moving toward him with the practiced smile she wore for customers, though it never quite reached her eyes anymore. "Whiskey, if you please," Owen said, his voice deep and surprisingly gentle. He was perhaps 26 or 27, she guessed, with the kind of weathered handsomeness that came from honest work under the desert sun. "And information, if you have got time to spare." Violet poured the amber liquid into a glass, her hand steady despite the way her pulse quickened. "Information costs extra around here," she said quietly, glancing toward where Marcus stood near the poker tables, watching his domain with hawk-like attention. Owen followed her gaze and seemed to understand immediately. "I am looking to hire help for my ranch. I heard in town that there might be folks here looking for honest work, but maybe I was pointed in the wrong direction." The words struck something deep in Violet's chest. Honest work. Freedom. She had dreamed of little else for 3 long years. "You were not pointed wrong," she said carefully, keeping her voice low. "But the people who work here are not free to leave. We are under contract." Owen's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He took a slow sip of his whiskey, his eyes never leaving hers. "Contracts can be bought out, can they not?" "In theory," Violet said, her hope rising despite her attempts to crush it down. "But Marcus does not like letting his workers go. He paid good money for our debts and he expects to profit from us for years." "How much?" Owen asked bluntly. Violet's breath caught. "How much what?" "How much does he claim you owe him?" She should not answer. She should walk away and serve the other customers and forget this stranger with his kind eyes and dangerous questions. But something in her refused to let this moment slip away. $500, she whispered. "I have been working here 3 years, and he says I still owe him $500 plus interest." Owen's expression darkened. "That is highway robbery. What was your original debt?" $200. "My father's gambling debt before he died. Marcus paid it off and added me to his books. But he charges me for room and board, for the dresses I wear, for the rouge on my cheeks. I will never be free of him at this rate." The cowboy set down his glass with careful precision. "Where is your employer now?" "Over there by the tables," Violet said, her stomach twisting with a mixture of fear and something that felt dangerously like hope. Owen straightened his shoulders and crossed the saloon floor with purposeful strides. Violet watched, her heart hammering as he approached Marcus Sullivan, a portly man with greasy hair and cold eyes that had seen countless dreams die in his establishment. "Mr. Sullivan." Owen's voice carried across the room, and several of the card games paused as men looked up with interest. Marcus turned, sizing up the cowboy with a calculating gaze. "That is me. You looking for entertainment or cards?" "Neither. I am looking to buy out a contract. The young woman at the bar, Miss Adams. What would it take for you to release her from service? The saloon went quieter. Violet felt every eye turn toward her and heat flooded her cheeks. This was not how these things were done. Contracts were private matters, negotiations conducted in back rooms, not announced in front of everyone. Marcus's face split into an ugly grin. Well now, that is an interesting proposition. Violet is one of my best girls. Brings in a lot of business with that pretty face. I would need to be well compensated for losing her. Name your price, Owen said flatly. $1,000. Gasps echoed through the room. Violet felt her knees go weak. That was double what Marcus claimed she owed. It was an impossible sum, meant to end the conversation before it began, but Owen did not flinch. Her original debt was $200, and she has worked for you 3 years. By any honest accounting, she has more than paid what was owed. $500, and not a cent more. Marcus's grin faded. I set the terms here, Cowboy. You do not walk into my establishment and tell me how to run my business. I am not telling you how to run your business, Owen said, his voice remaining calm but taking on an edge of steel. I am offering you $500 for a contract that is not worth half that much. You can take the money and profit handsomely, or you can refuse and have everyone in this room know you for the cheat you are. The silence was absolute now. In the hierarchy of frontier justice, reputation mattered more than almost anything else. Men had been run out of towns for less than being publicly called a cheat. Marcus's face reddened. You are calling me a cheat. I am saying that any man who would keep a woman in servitude through inflated debts and invented charges is no better than a slave trader, and those are not welcome in decent society, Owen said clearly. $500 is my offer. Take it or refuse it, but make your choice now. Violet could barely breathe. She saw Marcus's hand drift toward the gun at his belt and terror seized her. But before Marcus could draw, the sheriff, who had been playing cards in the corner, stood up. I would think real careful before you make a move you cannot take back, Marcus, Sheriff Tom Henderson said mildly. He was a lean man with gray in his beard and a reputation for fairness that had kept Kingman relatively peaceful. The cowboy is right about one thing. Folks around here do not take kindly to anyone who treats their workers worse than livestock. You have been pushing the boundaries for a while now. Marcus's hand moved away from his gun. The calculation in his eyes was visible as he weighed his options. Finally, with visible reluctance, he said, $750, final offer. $600, Owen countered, and you tear up the contract right now in front of witnesses. Done, Marcus spat, but I want the money before she leaves this building. Owen turned to Violet, and the expression in his eyes made her chest tighten. Do you want to leave? I am not buying your freedom just to trap you in another cage. If you choose to come with me, it will be as a free woman. I have a ranch that needs help, and I can offer you honest wages and a safe place to live, but the choice is yours. Violet felt tears sting her eyes. No one had given her a choice in 3 years. Yes, she whispered, then stronger. Yes, I want to leave. Owen nodded once and pulled a leather pouch from his jacket. The sight of it made Marcus's eyes gleam with greed. The cowboy counted out $600 in gold coins onto the bar, each coin ringing against the scarred wood like a bell of freedom. The contract, Owen said. Marcus disappeared into his office and returned with a sheaf of papers. He made a show of tearing them dramatically in half, then quarters, then tossing the pieces onto the bar next to the gold. There, she is your problem now. She is no one's problem, Owen said quietly. She is a free woman. Violet felt as if she were in a dream as Owen gestured toward the door. Do you have belongings you need to gather? Just a small bag upstairs, she managed to say. It will only take a moment. "I will wait right here," Owen said, and something about the way he planted his feet made it clear he was not going anywhere until she returned. Violet hurried up the narrow stairs to the tiny room she shared with two other saloon girls. Her hands shook as she stuffed her few possessions into a worn carpetbag. A spare dress, a brush, the small Bible her mother had given her before she died, and a photograph of her parents on their wedding day. It was not much to show for 21 years of life, but it was hers. When she came back downstairs, Owen was standing exactly where she had left him, his hand resting casually on his belt near his revolver. The message was clear to everyone in the saloon. Marcus sat at a table counting his gold, his expression sour despite his profit. "Ready?" Owen asked gently. "Ready," Violet confirmed. They walked out into the golden evening light together, and Violet took her first breath as a free woman in 3 years. The air seemed sweeter somehow, the colors brighter. Owen led her to where a sturdy bay horse waited at the hitching post. "I only brought copper today," he said, patting the horse's neck. "My ranch is about an hour's ride from town. Would you be comfortable riding together? We can take it slow." "I do not mind," Violet said. In truth, her legs felt so weak with relief and shock that she was not sure she could walk an hour even if she wanted to. Owen mounted first, then reached down to pull her up behind him with surprising ease. She settled onto the horse's back, acutely aware of how close she was to him, her arms hesitantly circling his waist to hold on. "Just hold tight," Owen said. "Copper is gentle, but we have some rough terrain ahead." As they rode out of Kingman, Violet looked back only once at the town that had been her prison. Then she turned her face forward, toward whatever future awaited her, and tried to slow her racing heart. The ride gave her time to think, perhaps too much time. What did she really know about this man? He had spent a small fortune to free her, but why? What did he expect in return? Men did not do such things without wanting something. The lessons of the saloon had taught her that much. As if sensing her tension, Owen spoke without turning his head. "I should tell you about the ranch. It is called the Sunset Creek Ranch, about 300 acres with good water and grazing. I run about 200 head of cattle, some horses. I have 2 ranch hands who work for me, brothers named Tom and Jack Peterson. Good men, respectful. There is a main house and a bunkhouse. The main house has 3 bedrooms. You would have one to yourself with a lock on the door if that would make you more comfortable." The last detail seemed to be significant, and Violet felt some of her tension ease. "You said you needed help. What kind of help, honestly?" "Everything. Cooking, mending, keeping accounts. The house is a disaster because none of us have any skill at domestic matters. We have been surviving on burned beans and tough meat for too long. But more than that, I need someone who can help me make the ranch a real home, not just a place where men sleep between work. I will pay you $30 a month plus room and board. You can save your wages or spend them as you please, and if you ever want to leave, you are free to go." $30 a month was more than generous. Most cowboys made $40 a month and did back-breaking work for it. "Why did you do it?" Violet asked quietly. "You do not know me. Why did you spend so much money to free me?" Owen was silent for so long that Violet thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I had a sister once, Abigail. She was 2 years younger than me, sweet and full of dreams. When our parents died of fever, we did not have any money. A man offered to pay off our debts and give her work. Said she would be a maid in his hotel in Tucson. I was 17, stupid and desperate. I believed him." Violet's breath caught. She could already guess the end of this story. "It was not a hotel. It was a brothel. By the time I found out and went to get her, she had been there 6 months. She looked like a ghost of herself. I tried to buy out her contract, but I did not have enough money. I was just a ranch hand with nothing to my name. The owner laughed in my face. Owen's voice cracked slightly. Abigail took her own life 2 weeks later. She was 16 years old. "Oh God," Violet whispered. "I am so sorry. I swore that day that if I ever had the means, I would never let another woman be trapped like she was. It took me 9 years to build up my ranch and save enough money. When I came to Kingman today, I was not planning to go into the saloon. But something made me walk through those doors, and when I saw you, saw that look in your eyes like you were drowning, I knew I had to try." Tears slid down Violet's cheeks. She tightened her arms around his waist, no longer afraid. "Thank you," she said. "I will work hard for you, I promise. I will earn every cent of what you paid." "You do not owe me anything," Owen said firmly. "What I paid was the price of doing what was right. You owe me nothing but honest work, and if the arrangement does not suit you, you are free to seek employment elsewhere. Is that clear?" "Yes," Violet said, though privately she could not imagine wanting to leave. For the first time in years, she felt something like hope unfurling in her chest. The sun was setting in earnest when they crested a rise, and Violet saw the ranch spread out below them. It was beautiful in a rugged, honest way. A wooden ranch house sat amid a cluster of cottonwood trees, with a barn and several outbuildings nearby. A creek caught the last light of day, gleaming like a ribbon of gold. Cattle grazed in the distance, and horses moved in a corral near the barn. "Welcome to Sunset Creek," Owen said, and there was pride in his voice. As they rode down to the ranch, 2 men emerged from the barn. They were clearly brothers, both with sandy hair and freckled faces, though one was taller than the other. They watched with open curiosity as Owen dismounted and helped Violet down. "Tom, Jack, this is Miss Violet Adams. She will be working here at the ranch, helping with the house and cooking. I expect you to treat her with respect." Owen's tone made it clear this was not a request. The taller brother, Tom, pulled off his hat. "Madam, it is nice to meet you." "Real nice," Jack added, also removing his hat. "We sure could use help with the cooking. Owen nearly poisoned us last week with his attempt at stew." Despite everything, Violet found herself smiling. "I am not the best cook in the world, but I promise I will not poison you." "That is all we ask," Tom said with a grin. Owen led Violet into the ranch house, and she saw immediately what he meant about it being a disaster. Dirty dishes were piled in the kitchen. Dust covered most surfaces, and the whole place had the neglected air of a space where no one truly lived, only existed between work shifts. "I know it is not much to look at right now," Owen said, sounding almost apologetic, "but it has good bones. 3 bedrooms down that hall, the third one would be yours. There is a pump in the kitchen for water, and we have a root cellar that stays cool even in summer. The furniture is rough but solid. I built most of it myself." Violet set down her bag and looked around with new eyes. Underneath the dirt and disorder, she could see the care that had gone into building this house. The furniture might be simple, but it was well made and sturdy. The windows were large enough to let in good light. The fireplace was beautifully constructed from local stone. "It is wonderful," she said honestly. "It just needs some attention." "That it does," Owen agreed. He pulled out a chair at the kitchen table, one of the few surfaces not covered in debris. "Sit for a moment. You have had a long day." Violet sat, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the past few hours was fading, leaving her shaky and overwhelmed. Owen pumped water into a kettle and set it on the stove, stirring up the coals and adding wood with practiced efficiency. "I will make coffee. It is about the only thing I can prepare that is guaranteed not to be terrible. Can I ask you something?" Violet said. "Of course." "Why did you tell me about your sister? You barely know me." Owen was quiet for a moment, measuring coffee grounds into a pot. "Because I wanted you to understand. I am not some knight rescuing a maiden for glory or for gratitude. I am a man trying to make right what I could not fix 9 years ago. And I wanted you to know that this ranch, this place, it is meant to be safe. I will never harm you or allow you to be harmed. That is my promise." The simple sincerity in his words made Violet's throat tight. "I believe you," she said. They drank coffee in companionable silence as the darkness settled over the ranch. Tom and Jack had headed to the bunkhouse, leaving them alone. It should have felt awkward or frightening, but instead Violet felt a strange sense of peace. "Let me show you your room," Owen said finally. "You must be tired." He led her down the hall to the third bedroom. It was sparse but clean, with a bed covered in a faded quilt, a small dresser, and a window that looked out toward the creek. Owen lit an oil lamp on the dresser. "There is a lock on the inside of the door," he said, pointing to the simple but sturdy mechanism. "And I am at the far end of the hall. If you need anything in the night, just call out. I sleep light." "Thank you," Violet said, "for everything. I know I keep saying it, but I do not know what other words to use." Owen smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something warm and genuine. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we can start fresh. There is no rush to do everything at once." After he left, closing the door gently behind him, Violet sat on the bed and let herself cry. They were not tears of sadness, but of relief, of release, of emotions too complex to name. She cried for the 3 years she had lost, for the girl she had been before the saloon, for the future she had thought was gone forever, but now seemed possible again. Finally, exhausted, she changed into her nightgown and slipped under the quilt. The bed was more comfortable than the narrow cot she had shared at the saloon. Through the window, she could see stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called and cattle lowed softly. Violet fell asleep, feeling safe for the first time in years. She woke to sunlight streaming through her window and the sound of male voices outside. For a moment, disoriented, she forgot where she was. Then memory rushed back, and she sat up quickly, her heart racing. It had not been a dream. She was really here, really free. Violet dressed quickly in her spare dress, a simple calico that had seen better days but was clean and modest. She brushed her hair and pinned it up, then ventured out into the rest of the house. The kitchen was empty, but someone had made coffee. The pot sat on the stove, still warm. Violet poured herself a cup and looked around, considering where to start. The task seemed overwhelming, but she reminded herself of Owen's words. There was no rush to do everything at once. She started with the dishes, pumping water and heating it to wash 3 years' worth of accumulated grime. It was satisfying work, concrete and simple. By the time the men came in for the midday meal, she had made significant progress. Owen stopped in the doorway, surprise evident on his face. "You did not have to start working immediately. I meant what I said about taking time to settle in." "I wanted to," Violet said honestly. "It felt good to do something useful, something I chose to do." Understanding flickered in Owen's eyes. "Well, we appreciate it, but you have to eat too. Let me help you put together something for lunch." They worked side by side, and Violet discovered that Owen had not been exaggerating about his limited cooking skills. Still, between them, they managed to produce a reasonable meal of bread, cheese, dried meat, and canned peaches. Tom and Jack came in when Owen rang the bell, and they all sat down together at the now clean table. It felt strange and wonderful to share a meal like this, like a family rather than employees and employer. "Miss Adams, this is the cleanest this kitchen has been since Owen's aunt visited 2 years ago and nearly had a fit," Jack said cheerfully. "If you keep this up, we might think we are living in a civilized place." "Do not pressure her," Owen said, but there was a smile in his voice. "She just got here." "I do not mind," Violet said, "though I will need to make a list of supplies. The pantry is pretty bare and I cannot cook proper meals without ingredients." "Make whatever list you need," Owen said. "We go into Kingman for supplies once a month, but I can make a special trip this week if necessary." The mention of Kingman made Violet stiffen slightly. Owen noticed immediately. "Or I can send Tom and Jack with your list," he said quietly. "You do not have to go back there if you do not want to." "Thank you," Violet said, grateful for his understanding. The days fell into a rhythm. Violet worked on the house, slowly transforming it from a neglected bachelor dwelling into a real home. She scrubbed and cleaned, mended curtains, organized the chaos into order. Owen and the Peterson brothers worked the ranch, but they always came in for meals, and the kitchen table became a place of conversation and laughter. Violet discovered that she enjoyed cooking when she had proper ingredients and was not being rushed or harassed. She made stews and roasts, baked bread and biscuits, even attempted pies with varying degrees of success. The men praised everything enthusiastically, though she suspected they would have been grateful for anything that was not burned. In the evenings, after the work was done, Owen would sometimes sit on the porch, and Violet found herself joining him. They would watch the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink while they talked about everything and nothing. She learned that he had started the ranch with money saved from years of cowboy work, that he loved the land with a fierce passion, that he dreamed of building something that would last. In turn, she told him about her childhood, about parents who had loved her, about her father's descent into gambling after her mother's death from pneumonia, about the desperation that had led to her indenture. It felt good to talk about it, to have someone listen without judgment. 3 weeks after she arrived at Sunset Creek, Violet woke to the sound of heavy rain. It was a rare and precious sound in the Arizona Territory, and she lay in bed for a moment just listening. Then she remembered that Owen had mentioned several leaks in the roof that needed patching, and she jumped up, worried about damage to the house. She found Owen already in the kitchen, moving pots and buckets to catch drips. His hair was wet, suggesting he had been outside checking on the animals. "How bad is it?" Violet asked. "Could be worse. The barn is solid and the stock is fine, but we have got a few problems with the house roof. I will need to get up there and patch it properly once the rain stops." They worked together to position containers under the leaks, and Violet made coffee and breakfast while Owen changed into dry clothes. The rain continued all day, a steady drumming that turned the normally dry landscape into a temporary wonderland of flowing water and green growth. By evening, one of the leaks had worsened, dripping steadily into a bucket in the hallway. Owen frowned at it. "That is the section I was most worried about. The wood up there is old and might be rotting. I will have to replace some boards, not just patch it." "Can you do it alone?" Violet asked. "I will manage. Done it before." But the next morning, when Owen climbed up onto the roof with his tools, Violet watched anxiously from the ground. The wood was slippery from the previous day's rain, and some of the boards looked dangerously weak. Her fears proved founded when she heard a cracking sound and Owen's sharp curse. She ran to where she could see him and found him half fallen through a weak section of roof, his legs scraped and bleeding, holding himself up by gripping a solid beam. "Do not move," Violet called. "Let me get Tom and Jack." She ran to the barn where the brothers were working, and within minutes they had a ladder positioned and were helping Owen down safely. His leg was bleeding but not seriously injured, just scraped raw where the rough wood had caught him. "You could have been killed," Violet said, her voice shaking more than she expected. The thought of losing him, of this steady presence in her new life disappearing, had terrified her in a way she had not anticipated. "I am fine," Owen said, but he let her help him into the house and clean the wound. Her hands were gentle as she washed away the blood and applied a clean bandage, and when she looked up, she found him watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. "I am glad you are all right," she said softly. "So am I," Owen replied, and something in his voice suggested he was talking about more than just the fall. The moment stretched between them, charged with an awareness that had been building for weeks. Then Tom called from outside, asking about the roof repairs, and the spell broke. But things were different after that. Violet found herself noticing details about Owen she had overlooked before. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. The gentleness of his hands when he worked with the horses. The sound of his laugh, rare but warm. The way he always made sure she was comfortable and safe without being overbearing about it. She found herself thinking about him at odd moments, wondering what he was doing when he was out on the range. She took extra care with the meals she prepared, pleased when he complimented her cooking. She mended his shirts with neat, careful stitches, and felt a foolish pleasure when she saw him wearing them. One evening, about 6 weeks after she had arrived at the ranch, Owen asked if she would like to go riding with him the next day. "I want to check on the cattle in the north pasture, and I thought you might enjoy seeing more of the ranch. If you know how to ride, that is." "I used to ride when I was a girl," Violet said. "Before everything fell apart, I would like that very much." The next morning, Owen saddled 2 horses, Copper for himself and a gentle mare named Daisy for Violet. She had borrowed a pair of Jack's smaller trousers to wear under her skirt, a practical solution that made Owen grin. "You look ready for adventure," he said. They rode out together into the beautiful morning. The rain from the previous week had transformed the landscape, bringing out wildflowers and green grass where there had been only brown earth before. Violet felt a joy she had not experienced in years, the simple pleasure of being outside in beautiful country with good company. Owen showed her the boundaries of his property, pointing out landmarks and explaining his plans for the ranch. He talked about wanting to expand the herd, about maybe adding some sheep, about planting an orchard if he could find a good water source. "It sounds like you have big dreams," Violet said. "Dreams are all I had for a long time," Owen said. "Dreams and determination. Now I am finally seeing them come real, but it still feels fragile sometimes, like it could all disappear if I do not hold on tight enough." "I understand that," Violet said quietly. "This whole past month and a half has felt like a dream I am afraid to wake from." Owen turned in his saddle to look at her. "It is not a dream, Violet. This is real. You are free and you have a place here for as long as you want it." "What if I want it to be forever?" The words slipped out before she could stop them, and Violet felt her cheeks flame. "I am sorry, I should not have said that. You have been so kind, and here I am being presumptuous." "You are not being presumptuous," Owen said, his voice rough. He pulled Copper to a stop, and Daisy halted beside the larger horse. "Violet, I need to tell you something, and I have been holding back because I did not want to make you uncomfortable or feel pressured. But keeping quiet is becoming harder than speaking." Violet's heart hammered in her chest. "What is it?" "I have come to care for you deeply. More deeply than I ever intended. You are not just an employee or someone I helped. You have become important to me in a way that has nothing to do with work or obligation. When I saw you in that saloon, something in me recognized something in you. And these past weeks, getting to know you, watching you bloom into the woman you were meant to be, it has been one of the greatest privileges of my life." Tears stung Violet's eyes. "Owen, I feel the same way. I tried not to. I told myself I was being foolish, that you were just being kind. but I cannot help how I feel. You gave me back my life, and somewhere along the way, you became the most important part of it." Owen dismounted in one smooth motion and reached up to help Violet down. When her feet touched the ground, he did not let go. They stood close together, his hands on her waist, her hands on his shoulders. "I do not want you to feel obligated to me because of what I did," Owen said. "Your freedom has to be real, including freedom to not return my feelings." "It is not obligation," Violet said firmly. "It is choice. It is the first truly free choice I have made in years. I choose you, Owen. I choose this." He kissed her then, gently at first, as if afraid she might break or pull away. But Violet kissed him back with all the emotion she had been holding inside, and the kiss deepened into something that spoke of longing and hope and new beginnings. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "Court you properly. Maybe you could ride into Kingman with me sometime, and I could buy you dinner at the hotel restaurant. We could walk around town like a normal courting couple." Violet stiffened at the mention of Kingman, and Owen immediately noticed. "Or we do not have to go there," he said quickly. "There are other towns, or we can just stay here, whatever makes you comfortable." Violet took a deep breath. "No, I should not let Marcus Sullivan control me even from a distance. If I want to go into Kingman, I should be able to go. Besides, I am not the same woman who left that saloon. I am free now, and I have you beside me." "Always," Owen promised. They rode back to the ranch holding hands where the terrain allowed, and Violet felt as if she were floating. That evening, when Tom and Jack saw them together, saw the way Owen looked at Violet and the way she smiled at him, the brothers exchanged knowing glances and grins. "About time," Tom muttered to Jack, though not quietly enough that Violet could not hear. She blushed, but could not stop smiling. The courtship that followed was sweet and careful. Owen continued to be respectful of Violet's space and boundaries, but they spent increasing amounts of time together. They would sit on the porch in the evenings, sometimes talking, sometimes just enjoying each other's presence. Owen taught Violet to throw a lasso, laughing when her first attempts landed nowhere near the fence post target. Violet taught Owen to dance, humming the tunes she remembered from before her time at the saloon, and they spun around the kitchen while Tom and Jack watched with amusement. 2 months after their confession to each other, Owen kept his promise and took Violet into Kingman for dinner. She dressed in a new dress he had bought for her, a beautiful blue cotton that brought out her eyes. They rode into town together in the ranch wagon, and Violet's nervousness increased as they approached the familiar streets. But walking into the hotel restaurant on Owen's arm, dressed respectably and treated with deference by the staff, was completely different from her previous life in Kingman. Several people recognized her, and she saw shock and speculation in their faces. But Owen's presence beside her, solid and protective, gave her courage. They were halfway through their meal when Marcus Sullivan walked into the restaurant. Violet's fork froze halfway to her mouth, and she felt the blood drain from her face. Marcus saw them immediately. His face darkened with anger, and he started toward their table. But before he could reach them, Sheriff Henderson appeared from seemingly nowhere and intercepted the saloon owner. "Marcus, I do not think these folks want company with their meal," the sheriff said mildly, but his hand rested on his gun belt in an unmistakable gesture. "That woman owes me," Marcus snarled, loud enough that heads turned. "She left without working out her contract properly." "Now that is strange," Owen said, standing up slowly. His voice was calm but carried through the now silent restaurant. "I have the bill of sale right here that says her contract was purchased and dissolved, paid in full with $600 that I watched you count with your own greedy hands." Are you saying you cheated me, Sullivan? Marcus's face turned purple. I did not cheat anyone, but she did not have the right to just walk out. She had every right, Sheriff Henderson said firmly. The contract was legally dissolved. You got your money, and Miss Adams is free to live her life as she chooses. Now I suggest you leave these folks alone before I decide to investigate some of the complaints I have been hearing about your business practices. The threat was clear. Marcus looked around the restaurant, seeing the disapproval on the faces watching him, and apparently decided he could not win this fight. With a final glare at Violet and Owen, he turned and stalked out. Violet realized she was shaking. Owen sat back down and took her hand across the table, not caring who saw. You are safe, he said quietly. He cannot touch you anymore. Thank you, Sheriff, Violet managed to say to Henderson, who had remained standing nearby. No thanks needed, Miss Adams. I should have looked harder at Sullivan's operation years ago. Hearing about what this young man did to free you proper has shamed me into taking a closer look at how he treats his workers. Things are going to change at the Silver Spur. After the sheriff left, Violet and Owen finished their meal, though Violet's appetite had diminished. But facing Marcus and coming out on the other side felt significant. As they walked back to the wagon, Owen squeezed her hand. You were brave, he said. I did not feel brave. I felt terrified. Being brave does not mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you are scared. You did not back down or hide. You held your head high. I am proud of you. Violet leaned against him for a moment, drawing strength from his steady presence. Can we go home now? Yes, Owen said, and the way he said it, the warmth in the word, made it clear that home was not just a place but a concept, a feeling of belonging and safety they had built together. The seasons changed. Summer faded into autumn, and the Arizona territory cooled from blistering to merely warm. Violet transformed the ranch house into a real home, with curtains on the windows and preserves in the root cellar, and a garden growing vegetables behind the kitchen. Owen's ranch prospered, the cattle healthy and the range productive. On a crisp October evening, 6 months after Violet had arrived at Sunset Creek Ranch, Owen asked her to take a walk with him. They strolled down to the creek that gave the ranch its name, now running clear and shallow under the stars. I want to ask you something, Owen said, and there was nervousness in his voice that was uncharacteristic. But first I need to make sure you understand something. You have been free for 6 months now. You have money saved from your wages. You could leave tomorrow and start a life anywhere you want. I want you to know that to really know it before I ask my question. Owen, I do not want to leave, Violet said. This is my home. I am glad, Owen said, because I want it to be your home forever. Violet Adams, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, not my employee or the woman I rescued, but my partner in all things? Joy flooded through Violet, so intense it almost hurt. Yes, she said. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Owen pulled a ring from his pocket, a simple gold band that caught the starlight. It was my mother's, he said. The only thing I have from her. I would be honored if you would wear it. Violet held out her hand and he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then they were kissing and laughing and holding each other as the creek murmured its approval and the stars wheeled overhead. They were married 3 weeks later by a circuit preacher who came through Kingman. Violet wore a white dress that Owen had specially ordered from Tucson, and she felt beautiful for the first time in years. Tom and Jack stood as witnesses, along with Sheriff Henderson and his wife. Even some of the women from town came, respectable women who had heard Violet's story and wanted to show their support. Marcus Sullivan was notably and blessedly absent. The wedding was simple but perfect. Violet spoke her vows with a clear voice, promising to love and honor Owen Garrett for all her days. Owen's voice was rough with emotion as he made the same promises to her. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed her with such tenderness that Violet felt tears slide down her cheeks. The wedding dinner was held at the hotel restaurant, the same place where Marcus had confronted them months before. But today, there was only joy and celebration. The Peterson brothers gave a rambling, funny toast that had everyone laughing. Sheriff Henderson wished them well and mentioned that the Silver Spur had new management, as Marcus Sullivan had decided to leave Kingman rather suddenly. The implication was clear, and Violet felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she had not even realized she was still carrying. That night, Owen carried Violet over the threshold of their home. Their home now, truly. He set her down gently in the bedroom that had been his but was now theirs. "Are you nervous?" he asked softly. "A little," Violet admitted. "The saloon was not kind in teaching me about what happens between men and women." "Then we will go slowly," Owen said, "and I will spend however long it takes showing you that it can be different. That it can be wonderful when it is with someone you love." He was true to his word. He was patient and gentle, and if Violet's first experiences in the saloon had taught her about selfishness and pain, Owen taught her about generosity and pleasure. By the time they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, Violet understood what it meant to be truly joined with another person, not just physically, but in every way that mattered. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. A harsh winter killed several head of cattle, and money was tight for a while. Violet caught influenza and was sick for 2 frightening weeks while Owen nursed her with anxious devotion. They had their first real argument when Owen took a risky financial gamble without consulting her, and Violet had to remind him that they were partners, and she deserved to be included in major decisions. But they worked through each challenge together, and their love grew deeper with each obstacle overcome. Violet discovered she had a head for business, and Owen increasingly relied on her judgment about ranch matters. She managed their accounts and correspondence, and when the opportunity arose to sell beef to the Army at Fort Mojave, it was Violet who negotiated the contract that gave them their best profit margin yet. Tom and Jack eventually left to start their own small ranch nearby, but they remained close friends. Owen hired 2 new ranch hands, younger men who treated Violet with respect and seemed to view the Garrett Ranch as a model for what their own lives could become. In the summer of 1880, 2 years after Violet first arrived at Sunset Creek Ranch, she realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She had seen women die in childbirth, had known the risks. But she also desperately wanted Owen's child, wanted to build a family with him. When she told Owen, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with delight. Then he immediately set her down gently, worried he might have hurt the baby. "I am not made of glass," Violet said, laughing at his sudden careful treatment. "No, but you are precious," Owen said, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "You and this baby both." Violet's pregnancy was relatively easy, though the summer heat made her uncomfortable. Owen fussed over her constantly, trying to prevent her from working too hard, until she finally had to sit him down and explain that she needed to stay active and useful or she would go mad. "I am pregnant, not broken," she said firmly. "I will rest when I need to rest, but you have to let me live my life." Owen agreed, though she could tell it went against every protective instinct he had. In February of 1881, on a cold, clear night, Violet went into labor. Owen had arranged for a midwife from Kingman to be present, a calm older woman named Mrs. Jennings who had delivered half the babies in the territory. Even with her experienced presence, Owen paced anxiously outside the bedroom, starting at every sound. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. At one point, Mrs. Jennings came out and told Owen that the baby was breech and things were complicated. The fear in Owen's eyes was absolute. "Save Violet," he said hoarsely. "If you have to choose, save my wife." But Mrs. Jennings was skilled and experienced. With patience and expertise, she managed to turn the baby, and finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, a baby's cry filled the house. Owen burst into the room to find Violet exhausted but smiling, holding a red-faced, furious newborn. "It is a boy," Violet said tiredly. "We have a son." Owen crossed to the bed in 3 strides, looking down at his wife and child with an expression of such love and awe that Violet felt tears prick her eyes. "He is perfect," Owen whispered. "You are amazing. I love you so much." They named him James, after Owen's father. Little James Garrett was a healthy baby with strong lungs and his father's dark hair. Owen was besotted from the first moment, spending hours just watching his son sleep. Violet discovered that motherhood suited her, though it was exhausting. She loved the weight of James in her arms, the sweet smell of him, the way he looked at her with perfect trust. It was healing in a way she had not expected, this ability to give her son the kind of childhood she had lost too early. As James grew, he revealed himself to be a curious, energetic child. By the time he was 2, he was toddling around the ranch getting into everything, trying to pet the horses and chase the chickens. Owen taught him to ride before he could barely walk, setting him on the saddle in front and leading the gentle old Daisy in circles around the corral. When James was 3, Violet discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was harder, and she was sick for the first several months. Owen was more worried than before, his fear of losing her never far from the surface. But Violet was determined to bring this child into the world. Their daughter was born in the spring of 1884, an easier birth than James had been. She was tiny and perfect, with Violet's lighter coloring and delicate features. They named her Catherine after Violet's mother. With 2 children, the ranch house was fuller and louder than ever. Violet sometimes thought about the girl she had been in the Silver Spur Saloon, trapped and hopeless, and marveled at the distance she had traveled. She had gone from having nothing and belonging nowhere to having everything that mattered, to being the center of a loving family in a home she had helped build. Owen proved to be a devoted father. He was patient with the children's endless questions, creative in entertaining them, and firm but kind when discipline was needed. Violet watched him teaching James to work with the cattle and Catherine to identify wildflowers, and she fell in love with him all over again. By 1886, the Sunset Creek Ranch was one of the most prosperous in the region. Owen had expanded the herd and added horses, and the Army contracts Violet had negotiated provided steady income. They hired more help and built a second bunkhouse. What had started as Owen's solitary dream had become a thriving enterprise. That summer, a young woman came to their door. She was perhaps 19, thin and hollow-eyed, and she asked if they needed help with any work. Violet saw herself in that girl, saw the desperation and exhausted hope. "What is your name?" Violet asked gently. "Sarah." "Sarah Mills." "Are you in some kind of trouble, Sarah?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. "I owe money to a man in Prescott. He says I have to work it off, but the interest keeps growing and I will never be free. I ran away, but I am afraid he will find me." Violet looked at Owen and she saw understanding in his eyes. This was their chance to do for someone else what had been done for them. "How much do you owe?" Owen asked. $300, Sarah whispered. "I know it is a fortune." "I should not have even asked." "We need help around the ranch," Violet said. Someone to help me with the house and the children, now that they are getting into everything. I can pay you $25 a month plus room and board. You can work for us honestly, save your wages, and when you have enough, you can pay off your debt as a free woman. Or if you prefer, my husband can travel to Prescott and buy out your contract, and you can work to pay us back at a fair rate with no interest. Sarah stared at them as if they were speaking a foreign language. Why would you do that for me? You do not even know me. Because someone did it for me once, Violet said simply, and because it is the right thing to do. Owen traveled to Prescott the next week and returned with Sarah's contract, properly purchased and dissolved. The man who had held it had not been happy, but Owen's reputation and the backing of Sheriff Henderson had been enough to keep things civil. Sarah proved to be a hard worker and a sweet girl. She was wonderful with James and Catherine, and Violet enjoyed having another woman around. Sarah saved every penny of her wages, determined to pay back the Garretts even though they told her it was not necessary. One day, about a year after Sarah arrived, Tom Peterson came by the ranch on an errand. He and Sarah met in the kitchen, and Violet saw the instant attraction between them. By the end of the year, Tom was courting Sarah properly, and they were married the following spring. Violet and Owen gave them a piece of land adjacent to Sunset Creek as a wedding present, and Tom and Sarah built their own small ranch there. It became a pattern over the years. Word spread that the Garretts were fair employers who treated their workers well, and sometimes helped those in desperate situations. Several young people in debt bondage found their way to Sunset Creek Ranch, and Owen and Violet helped each one find freedom and a new start. Some stayed to work, others moved on once they had saved enough money. But all of them carried with them the knowledge that second chances were possible. By 1890, James was 9 years old and Catherine was 6. They were growing up surrounded by love and stability, with no idea of the darkness their mother had escaped. Violet sometimes wondered when she should tell them her story, how much they needed to know about where she had come from. One evening, she asked Owen about it as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, a ritual they still maintained after all these years. They will need to know eventually, Owen said, but maybe not all the details, not until they are older. What they need to know is that people can overcome difficult circumstances, that their mother is strong and brave and built a good life out of ashes. Our children are so fortunate, Violet said. They have no idea what it is like to be hungry or scared or trapped. That is what we wanted, Owen said, pulling her close, to give them better than what we had, and we have succeeded. In 1892, Violet discovered she was pregnant again. At 35, the pregnancy was harder on her body than the previous ones had been. The doctor from Kingman came out regularly to check on her, and Owen was anxiously attentive. But in the early spring of 1893, Violet safely delivered another daughter, a healthy baby they named Abigail, after Owen's lost sister. It felt right to honor her memory this way, to let something beautiful rise from that old tragedy. Little Abigail was a happy baby, sunny and content, where Catherine had been fussy and James had been energetic. James, now 12, was fascinated by his new sister and remarkably gentle with her. Catherine, at 9, appointed herself Abigail's special protector. Life continued its gentle rhythm. The children grew and the ranch prospered. James showed a natural talent for working with horses and spent hours with his father learning everything about training and breeding. Catherine was more interested in the business side of things, often sitting with Violet to learn about accounts and contracts. Young Abigail toddled after everyone, trying to be part of whatever was happening. In 1895, when Violet was 38 and Owen 43, They sat on their porch one evening after the children had gone to bed. The stars were brilliant overhead, the same stars that had watched over them that night 17 years ago when Violet had first arrived at this ranch. "Do you remember that first night?" Violet asked. "When you brought me here?" "Every detail," Owen said. "I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever met, walking away from the only life you knew on the word of a stranger." "You were not a stranger," Violet said. "You were my salvation. You gave me back my life, my freedom, my future. Everything good that I have comes from that moment you walked through those saloon doors." "We gave each other a new life," Owen corrected. "This ranch was just a house before you came. You made it a home. You gave me a family, a purpose beyond just surviving. We built this life together." "Together," Violet agreed, leaning against his shoulder. "Always together." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the night and the peaceful breathing of their sleeping children in the house behind them. Violet thought about the long road she had traveled from that terrified girl in the Silver Spur Saloon to the woman she was now, confident and loved and free. She had learned that freedom was not just the absence of chains, but the presence of choice. She had learned that love was not something that trapped you, but something that set you free to become your best self. She had learned that family was not just blood, but the people you chose and who chose you in return. In 1898, when Violet was 41, James was 17 and announced his intention to marry Lucy Henderson, the sheriff's granddaughter. She was a sweet girl who loved James with her whole heart, and Violet and Owen gave their blessing happily. The wedding was held at the ranch, and half of Kingman turned out to celebrate. Catherine, at 14, was already showing signs of becoming a formidable businesswoman. She had ideas for expanding the ranch's operations and was learning everything she could about modern ranching techniques. Owen joked that she would probably be running the whole operation by the time she was 20. Abigail, at 5, was the baby of the family and showed no signs of wanting that to change. She was spoiled by her older siblings and parents alike, though Violet and Owen tried to keep her from becoming too entitled. In 1900, James and Lucy had their first child, making Violet and Owen grandparents. The baby boy, named Owen after his grandfather, was perfect and healthy. Violet held him in her arms and marveled at the continuation of the family they had built, the legacy that would extend beyond them. As the new century dawned, Violet sometimes looked back at the girl she had been 22 years earlier and barely recognized her. That girl had been broken and desperate, trapped in a life she had not chosen. The woman she had become was strong and free, surrounded by love and building a legacy that would last for generations. One evening in 1902, Violet and Owen celebrated their 24th wedding anniversary. Their children threw them a party, inviting all their friends and neighbors. Sarah and Tom were there with their 4 children. Other people they had helped over the years came, many with families of their own now. As Violet looked around the crowded ranch house, full of people laughing and talking and celebrating, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. This was what freedom looked like. This was what love built. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, Owen and Violet returned to their favorite spot on the porch. At 64, Owen's hair was silver and his face deeply lined, but his eyes were the same steady brown that had caught her attention so long ago. At 45, Violet's hair had threads of silver and her hands showed the work of building a home and raising children, but she felt more beautiful than she ever had in her youth. 24 years, Owen said. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes like forever. Both, Violet said. It feels like both. Do you have any regrets? Owen asked, Violet considered the question seriously. I regret the years I lost to the saloon. I regret my father's choices that put me there, but I cannot regret the path that led me to you. If everything had been different, we might never have met. I regret not being able to save Abigail, Owen said quietly. I will always regret that, but I think she would be happy about what we have built here, the people we have helped, the family we have created. I like to think it would have made her smile. I am sure it does, Violet said. Wherever she is, I am sure she is proud of you. They sat together as the stars wheeled overhead, the same stars that had watched over Violet's first night of freedom, over their first kiss, over every important moment of their life together. The ranch that had been Owen's solitary dream had become a symbol of hope and second chances. The Sunset Creek Ranch was known throughout the Arizona Territory as a place where people could find honest work and fair treatment, where those who had been beaten down by life could find their feet again. In 1905, Catherine married a young man from Tucson, a lawyer who shared her quick mind and business sense. The wedding was another joyous celebration at the ranch. Catherine's husband joined the ranch operation, bringing legal expertise that helped them navigate the increasingly complex business world as the territory moved toward statehood. James had taken over much of the day-to-day running of the ranch, working alongside his father and learning everything Owen could teach him. He and Lucy had 3 children now, and the ranch house echoed with the laughter of grandchildren. Abigail, at 12, was still deciding what she wanted to be when she grew up. She loved the ranch but also dreamed of seeing the world beyond Arizona. Violet encouraged her dreams, knowing that freedom meant letting your children choose their own paths. In 1908, Owen fell ill with pneumonia. It was a frightening echo of the illness that had taken Violet's mother so many years ago. For 2 weeks, Violet barely left his bedside, sponging his fevered brow and forcing liquids down his throat. She prayed more desperately than she had in years, not ready to lose the man who had given her everything. Owen recovered, but slowly, and he was never quite as strong afterward. At 66, he finally accepted that he needed to step back from the heavy physical work of ranching. James took over completely, though Owen remained involved in planning and decisions. Violet found herself thinking more about mortality, about the precious nature of the time they had. She and Owen began taking long walks together in the evenings, moving slower than they once had but savoring each moment. They talked about their life together, about the children and grandchildren, about the legacy they were leaving. "We did good, did we not?" Owen asked one evening. "We did very good," Violet confirmed. "We built something real and lasting. We helped people. We raised good children who are raising good children. We loved each other well. What more could anyone ask?" In 1910, Arizona Territory was on the verge of becoming a state. The world was changing rapidly, moving toward the modern era. Automobiles were becoming more common, electricity was spreading, the frontier days were fading into history. But at Sunset Creek Ranch, some things remained constant. Family and love, hard work and fair dealing, second chances and hope. These were the foundations that Violet and Owen had built their life on, and they remained solid even as the world transformed around them. Abigail left for college in California, the first member of the family to pursue higher education. Violet was proud and sad in equal measure, watching her youngest spread her wings. But she knew this was right, knew that her children's freedom to choose their own paths was the ultimate expression of the freedom she and Owen had fought so hard to build. In 1912, Violet turned 55 and Owen turned 70. They were older now, moving slower, but the love between them had only deepened with time. They had weathered every storm together, celebrated every joy together, built an entire world together. One spring evening, they sat on their porch as they had done countless times before. The sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and the ranch spread out before them peaceful and prosperous. "You remember what I told you that first night?" Owen asked. "That I wanted this ranch to be a home, not just a place where men slept between work." "I remember," Violet said. "You made that happen. You took my dream and made it real. This place, these people, this family, it is all because of you." "Because of us," Violet corrected, as she had so many times over the years. "We built this together. Neither of us could have done it alone." "Together," Owen agreed, taking her hand. After 34 years, his hand still fit perfectly in hers. They sat together as the stars came out, watching over the land they loved and the family they had built. From the house behind them came the sound of grandchildren laughing, of James and Lucy talking about the next day's work, of life continuing in its beautiful, ordinary way. Violet thought about the desperate girl who had poured whiskey in a saloon so long ago, who had looked at her life and seen no hope, no future, no escape. She thought about the cowboy who had walked through those doors and changed everything, who had given her freedom and then given her so much more. She thought about the long road they had traveled together, the challenges overcome and the joys celebrated. She thought about the children they had raised and the people they had helped and the legacy they would leave behind. And she thought about love, real love, the kind that set you free and helped you become who you were always meant to be. The kind that built homes and families and futures. The kind that lasted through every season, growing deeper and richer with time. As the last light faded from the sky and the stars blazed overhead, Violet leaned against Owen's shoulder and smiled. She was free, she was loved, and she was home. After everything, she had found her happily ever after, not in some fairy tale but in the real, messy, beautiful world of Sunset Creek Ranch, and it was more than she had ever dreamed possible, more than that desperate girl in the saloon could have imagined. It was everything. The years continued to pass gently at Sunset Creek Ranch. In 1914, when Violet was 57 and Owen 72, they celebrated their 36th wedding anniversary surrounded by their expanding family. James and Lucy now had 5 children. Catherine had 3. And even young Abigail had married a professor she met at college and was expecting her first child. The ranch continued to thrive under James's management, adapting to the changing times while maintaining the values Owen and Violet had established. Arizona had achieved statehood in 1912, and with it came new opportunities and challenges. But the Garrett name was respected throughout the region, synonymous with fairness and integrity. Owen's health continued to decline gradually, but his mind remained sharp. He spent his days in a comfortable chair on the porch, watching the ranch operate and offering advice when asked. The grandchildren loved to sit with him and listen to his stories of the old frontier days, of cattle drives and wild horses, and building a ranch from nothing. Violet remained active, still managing the household and spending time with her children and grandchildren. She had become something of a legend in Kingman and the surrounding communities. Women who had been trapped in difficult circumstances sought her out, knowing she understood and would help without judgment. Over the years, she had personally helped dozens of women find freedom and new beginnings. In 1916, Owen's health took a turn for the worse. The doctor said his heart was giving out, worn down by decades of hard work and the lingering effects of the pneumonia from years before. He spent most of his time in bed now, with Violet constantly by his side. One evening in late autumn, as the sun set over the ranch they had built together, Owen asked Violet to lie down beside him. She did, fitting herself carefully against his frail body, and he wrapped his arms around her one last time. "I need to tell you something," Owen said, his voice weak but clear. "What is it, my love? I need you to know that saving you that day in the saloon, that was not me being noble or generous. That was me being selfish. Because the moment I saw you, something in me knew you were going to be the most important thing in my life. I did not just free you, Violet. You freed me. You made me whole." Tears streamed down Violet's face. "You were always whole, Owen. You were the best man I ever knew. I was half a man until I found you. These 38 years with you have been the greatest gift of my life. I would do it all again, every moment, just to end up here with you." "I love you," Violet whispered. "I will always love you, and I love you, in this life and whatever comes after. You are my heart, Violet Garrett." He kissed her gently, and they lay together as the stars came out, the same stars that had witnessed every important moment of their life together. Sometime in the night, Owen's breathing grew shallow and then stopped. He passed peacefully, with Violet holding him and whispering her love. The grief was overwhelming, but Violet found comfort in knowing that Owen had lived a full life and died peacefully, surrounded by love. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people from across the territory. Cowboys and businessmen, families they had helped, friends they had made over decades. The outpouring of respect and affection for Owen was a testament to the kind of man he had been. Violet continued to live at the ranch, supported by her children and grandchildren. She was 69 years old, and some people suggested she might want to move to town where life would be easier. But Sunset Creek Ranch was her home, the place where she had found freedom and love. She would not leave it. She spent her remaining years being grandmother to a growing number of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, passing on the stories of how the ranch began, of the cowboy who gave her freedom and the life they built together. She made sure the next generation understood that their heritage was built on fairness, compassion, and second chances. Violet lived to be 78 years old, remaining sharp and active until near the end. When she finally passed in 1925, peacefully in her sleep, she was laid to rest beside Owen on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. Their matching headstones read simply, Owen Garrett, 1842, 1916, and Violet Garrett, 1847-1925. Beloved husband and wife, founders of Sunset Creek Ranch. But their true legacy was not in stone. It lived on in the ranch that still operated under the values they established, in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their names and their principles forward, in the countless people whose lives they had touched and transformed, in the enduring proof that second chances were possible and love could triumph over any circumstance. The story of the saloon girl and the cowboy who freed her became part of Arizona legend, told and retold over the years. But to those who knew them, it was not a fairy tale but a true story of courage and love, and the power of one person to change another's life completely. And long after they were gone, their legacy continued. The Sunset Creek Ranch remained in the family for generations, always maintaining its reputation as a place of fair dealing and second chances. The story of Owen and Violet was passed down through the years, a reminder that the greatest adventures are not always about conquest or treasure, but about finding love and building a life worth living. The end.